I'm Arya Schwartz along with Ben Dull, and welcome to the Winsidr Show where it's all about the W. With many of the big free agency moves in the rear view, it's time to discuss the power rankings and what teams have left to do. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. While you're over there, check out the Overseas Tracker. It's live now. You can see where your favorite WNBA players are playing overseas all in one place. And one last plug, you need to check out the free agency tracker. We got lots of trackers going on. We're like a GPS over here. Ben Dole has done an amazing job tracking all the movement throughout this free agency period and what it means for the league. As of now, it's hard to say power rankings, right, Ben? The draft hasn't happened. There's still some final moves to be made. There's some big names who have not signed their contracts yet. But that's the fun of it. We're putting on our GM cap and we're talking power rankings. First, we're going to talk power rankings, and then we're going to dive into a few other free agency topics that I know the fans are interested in and you and I are interested in. Before we do rankings, I assume that we're going to view these in different styles of tiers. So always feel free to pop in and say otherwise. But anything you want to say to start off the episode, Ben?
Hey, I'm just doing you a solid, man. You've been fiending to rank some teams, so I'm gonna play ball
I
here.
There we go. Yeah, I have been fiending. All right. Well, I broke it down into a few different categories. You got the top dogs, the people who going into the season or as of right now, you expect them to be in the finals, right? And not going to the finals, fine. I get that. Maybe that's not like a disappointment, but not making the semifinals for these teams, that's a disappointment. And the two teams that I have in that tier is Vegas and Chicago, right? Vegas for the sense of they have Chelsea Gray. I think it's a great fit. Um, Bringing back Liz Cambage, a healthy Kelsey Plum. This team just looks too stacked and too scary. And then when it comes to Chicago, I think they kind of put all their chips in. They said, this is the one type of player that we need to be next level and make a championship run. And that player was Candace Parker, and they got her. And hopefully they have a healthy Azrae Stevens and a healthy Diamond Shields this next season. And I got to say, looking at this team, you have to think, the expectations were high last year. Now they add a rookie of the year and an MVP and a champion to their roster all in one in Candace Parker. You got to expect that's that high. If you were to use that type of tiering, Ben, is there any team I'm missing, or would you not have both those teams in there? What's your thoughts?
I would probably circle 5 teams right now that I think can actually win the championship, and my top two within that group, which is where I think I would separate them, is I would have Vegas 1 and DC 2.
Ooh, DC. So this is where it gets interesting because my next tier, my tiers are top dogs, contenders, could be contenders, but I still need to see something to believe it, which I know is a cop out in our current state. Fighting for a playoff spot and then not making the playoffs. I think we all agree on that bottom spot of not making the playoffs. In my opinion, Indiana is the only team who's not actually going to be fighting for a playoff spot. Do you agree? Disagree?
Yes, I agree. I agree with that.
I had to. You disagreed with me in the beginning, so I had to, snake in one that we agree about. For me, for the contenders, so like the top four teams that I feel confident in right now, fully confident in their ability, is Vegas, Chicago as the top dogs. Contenders, Minnesota and Phoenix. I really, really like what both these teams have done. Maybe that's the old REA of, so used to seeing these teams succeed and face off in the playoffs. And hopefully that means another rivalry. So those are my top four teams. And then for contenders, but I need to see more, I have Connecticut, Seattle, and Washington, all for very different reasons. Washington, I don't know how this Tina Charles thing is going to look. I don't know how the lack of Chrissy Tolliver and Ariel Powers is going to look. I am excited about Alicia Clark. I am excited about the surgeons, not resurgence, just the surgeons of Maisha Hines Allen. Seattle, I think the questions are obvious with all the people that they've lost. How are they going to gel? And then Connecticut is kind of like a merry-go-round of who's not going to be, which of the big names is not going to be with them. And so for me, I just think that it's a system of I all three of those teams I think are contenders, but to put them, I don't have the same confidence that I do with Phoenix and Minnesota. Obviously, you think of it in a little bit of different way, but kind of give me your thoughts on that.
Well, so are you saying? So are you saying all seven of those teams you think they have a realistic chance to win the championship?
I would say out of all those teams, Connecticut has the least Connecticut or Seattle probably has the least realistic. Um, but yeah, I mean, I truly think, and this is one of the first times that I can remember that there is 5 to 7 teams in the league that could legitimately win a championship. I truly think that it's going to be like a very very close race to see who gets what seeding in the playoffs this coming season.
Yeah, the seeding is one thing. Seven might be a little high if we're talking about teams that can actually win it. But if we're gonna actually get to the Mystics here, I have the rest of my top five. It's the same as your top four. So I guess just what do you not like about the Mystics right now?
Well, like I said, like I would consider them a contender. And actually, I'm
But
curious for
poke,
your
but
thoughts
poke
on
some
this.
holes. Like
Yeah.
what do you not like?
All right. Well, I mean, granted, assuming Emma and Natasha join the team, which all signs seem to be pointing that way. Maybe Emma doesn't join. For me, my question is just that, and I think we've talked about it in a podcast episode before. I'm concerned about the playmaking ability. Errol Atkins, Alicia Clark, and Natasha Cloud are going to be asked to create a lot more offense than I think any of them have ever necessarily been asked to do in their careers. So for me, I'm not saying Natasha Cloud, I'm not saying those three players can't do it. What I'm saying is that I think too many people, and maybe this is just me sticking my tongue out at the people like you, no offense, who are standing here saying, oh, they're a legit championship contender. I'm not specifically saying they're not. What I'm saying is we can't just go, oh, they're the 2019 champions and they missed key players last year, so we're going to view them in that same light. I just don't view them in the same light because their roster has had so much turnover since that 2019 season. I just can't look at them the same. So for me, I need to see what Tina Charles with that roster looks like. I need to see, you know, what we can expect from an Atkins being more of a offensive leader, more of somebody who they need to be offensively active, as opposed to in the past, it's just kind of been, a cherry on top.
I just disagree that I don't think it's really gonna be Clark and Atkins being asked to do all this stuff. It's gonna be on their front court where they added Tina Charles and then they have this version of Maisha Hines Allen. If they have two of those front court players out there at the same time, maybe even three, but if you just think of it as two, Elena Deladon and from my perspective, I would think Tina Charles is going to start. So if you start games with Elena and Tina, and you have that dead bang shooting from Clark and Atkins in the game, you have Natasha Cloud who's going to be able to run a pick and roll in space. Tina Charles can post up one on one, and if you send help, she's throwing it out to a good 3 point shooter. I don't really see a lot to not like there, especially if we are at least factoring Misaman being there by the time the playoffs start. You bring her off the bench, and then you also have the Heinz Allen factor that's also able to, at minimum, just give you something else when some of these other players are resting. The If you want to point it to 2019, not having the element with Christy Tolliver, I understand that, but Tolliver wasn't the same player in the playoffs anyways.
True, but they also then relied heavily on Powers. Like that
I
my
don't know.
my
I don't know about. I think heavily might be a little too strong.
All right, heavily might be a
Powers
little too
wasn't
strong, but
closing every single game in the playoffs.
you're right. But here's the thing. As we saw when Christy Tolliver went down, and a sentiment that I heard repeatedly was when Christy Tolliver went down, we plugged in Aerial Powers, and our team, you could argue, looked better without Christy. And I'm not, and they it wasn't just as simple as we plugged in Aerial Powers. There was other players, um, excuse me, who took in there and got more minutes and got more run. But for me, it it's just hard for me to look at that 2019 team and 2019 team. That's a tongue twister. And say that's kind of my jumping board or my barometer of this team. Now, obviously, look, that was one of the historic great teams offensively in league history, right? But to be fair, I just don't think we can use that as the barometer. So for me, it's like, okay, yeah, they won the championship. They still have a few pieces from that championship run, some key pieces. I'm not trying to downgrade that, but this is a very different team. So it's not the same as, for instance, Minnesota, who plugged in Taj McWilliams Franklin, leaves, and then they plug in Sylvia Fowles, right? And then so this isn't like a championship team plugging in one player. Now they're plugging in multiple players, and at what point is this just a completely different beast? Now, I will play my own devil's advocate and say, well, the argument, RA, is yeah, it's a different beast, but they have a plentiful amount of skilled players and high power players, so they're still going to be fine. Is that what you're saying, or are you saying? Because I guess my argument is more so not that this team isn't going to be successful, but that I can't compare them to the 2019 and have like that high of of baseline expectations for them. Does that make sense?
Well, I would just ask, like how do you think people are going to be able to guard them if Elena Deladon is healthy to start the season and they're just going to throw her the ball? What are you going to do? You're gonna you're gonna risk leaving Atkins and Clark open for three. Cloud is still a big time pick and roll threat with her ability to get in the lane and kick it out. And again, I think the Tina Charles element, I think it's been kind of miscast. Maybe what the concerns might be there. If Tina Charles is just playing Latoya Sanders' minutes, well, if you're guarding the Mystics before, Latoya would just get left open for a 15-footer. But if you switch a smaller player, Tina's just going to post her up, and that's a free 2 points. They can actually throw Tina the ball, and she can actually do something, take a dribble, do some, just do something, be more than a totally stationary player. Or if they just put in Maisha Hines Allen in that spot, and she's going to be shooting threes, and she can take it all the way to the basket. She can drive and kick. She can punish mismatches. I mean, I just think they're going to be too hard for people to guard.
I think it's going to be exciting and interesting. Obviously, my opinions will probably change once we get closer to the season. And honestly, my opinions probably won't change about this until I can see some tape and see, okay, this is how they're going to run things. If I'm a defending coach, I'm just going to say, okay, I'm fine with Tina beating us. If we, you know what I mean? Like, while yes, she's a much more efficient offensive threat than Latoya Sanders, I'm fine saying, okay, we're gonna get her, like she can get hers, cool. But if we can, try and contain Elena Deladon and not allow Alicia Clark to get, many open three looks, I think that's going to be the issue. Honestly, I will say my offensively for this team, I think is the issue. Defensively, I think this team is going to be much better than we ever saw them before in that 2019 run.
I think it's definitely possible. And that also just makes me kind of wonder how you're just kind of still struggling to see the upside for them. Like the going back to the point of having someone that can dribble, sure, I think there's a little bit more on Cloud's plate at the end of the day. That deal they still have to get done, obviously, by the way. They do still have Leilani Mitchell coming off the bench who can give you good minutes, especially in the regular season. So maybe they're a little light in that aspect, but if you're still able to let Deladon play in space to where she can go 1-on-1, if you still have Misa Min at some point, and then just having Hines Allen can do a lot, can take up a lot of that trying to make some plays for you too. So I just yeah, defensively, I think they'll be really exciting if Tina Charles really wants to buy into this role and Mike Tebow wants her to really help them out with their rebounding and they can still have a lot of size on the court a lot of the time. I agree with you on that part.
I also will say that we are going into this assuming we don't have more opt outs due to health concerns. COVID is still real, it is still a thing. There is still a chance that come WNBA season time, Elena Deladon, Latoya Sanders, even Tina Charles, 3 players who all did not play because of health concerns, um, could still not be playing. Now, that's not going into my evaluation. I don't think that's going into your evaluation. I think we're viewing it as all these players are playing. Enough about DC though. Obviously, we don't see eye to eye, and I think these types of conversations just grow to strengthen it. You know, what I mean, it's look. We'll debate this. We'll continue to debate it. At some point, we'll have Rachel come in here and moderate and do it ESPN style and like give us points for cool points that we make. But I'm curious for you with I include them basically. I'll put it this way. In my categorization, Washington, Seattle, and Connecticut have an asterisk next to them because I just, in my mind, have these question marks. We talked about Washington quickly. Seattle and Connecticut, do you feel closer to where I am or similarly like distant from me like we were on Washington?
Yeah, I also have them in that next group for me. I have Connecticut 6, Seattle 7. You know, Connecticut, they're still going to be really hard to play against. They're still going to be really good on defense. You're basically looking at John. I think right now with what they're going to do at power forward. I mean, they signed Morgan Birch. It obviously be awesome for Morgan if she can make a roster, but you know we'll see if she's even a part of the rotation. So if it's basically a clean swap of Jonquel Jones for Alyssa Thomas, there are some things you can't do defensively without AT in the lineup, but they're still going to have a ton of size. You have the element of JJ protecting the rim and on the glass, which they didn't have. They're going to lose a lot of their transition game without AT being able to the one to get it and go. So I think offensively, it's still going to be a struggle for them sometimes. Again, especially because you know if they're going to play Dewana Bonner at the 4, that can get pretty interesting. But then who's that other player that they're going to plug on the wing? You know they didn't add anybody else in terms of a proven veteran. I like Kamaya Smalls as a flyer, but we'll see if she even makes the roster. So that's kind of why I didn't really like the Brianna Jones contract for them too. Is if they could have just gotten someone that can shoot and see if that would work out for you. So I think Connecticut, there's going to be questions if it's just going to be too tough for them offensively, and Seattle, maybe the opposite end of the coin. It's just how good can they actually be on defense with something else at small forward, like playing that by committee, and then at the 5, rather than Natasha Howard, we've seen Mercedes Russell in that starting role for them. Is Ezzy Magbagor just going to take off? I'm more than willing to adjust how I'm looking at them if we see it from Ezzy, but right now, I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The interesting part for me is this next part. Fighting for a playoff spot, I have Dallas, Los Angeles, and New York. That's going to be a tight squeeze. And oh, and wait, am I missing a team? One, two, three, four, five, six,
You're missing
seven,
my eighth team, Atlanta.
eight, nine. Wow, I knew I missed a team. I can't count. All right, they're also fighting for a playoff spot. I don't think they make it, but I am curious for you. Like, if gun to your head, you had to pick 4 teams right now not making the playoffs, what 4 teams are they? And I'm doing this to you because I'm pretty sure maybe I dreamt about this, but I'm pretty sure you called me out on this last episode, so now I'm returning the favor. Gun to your head, please pick 4 teams that will not be making the playoffs for 2021 in the WNBA
Well,
season.
I only made you do it because you actually brought it up, but then didn't actually name the teams. So
Whatever, Ben. Okay.
hey, I will. Hey, what do I know? I was only the person there. Anyway,
Yeah. The only person there.
Yeah, I said I have Atlanta eighth, so I would probably go New York 9, Dallas 10, LA 11. New York, Dallas, LA very close together. I would say they can grab that spot, but I would favor Atlanta right now, and then Indiana at 12.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel that. I mean, for me, it's Dallas. Yeah, it's Dallas or Atlanta, and it's really a matter of, okay, what can we see from them? I don't have it as clear cut. I kind of am leaning Dallas just because of, I don't know. I guess Dallas is still younger, and Atlanta is very much dependent on a singular second year vet versus Dallas, who's very dependent on, like multiple under 3 year vets. So I get it.
That's
Um,
where I push back on Atlanta and why I like them. Kennedy, well, one for Kennedy Carter, she actually has someone. She actually has two players. I can't believe she has two players now that can actually pick and pop and make a 3-pointer. How big of a difference is that going to make for her? But the rest of the main players on their roster, those are all really proven, like really good players that we've actually seen something from. Courtney Williams, Shakina Strickland, Cheyenne Parker, Tiana Hawkins, who I mentioned, Elizabeth Williams. They even traded for Vonnie Turner to come off the bench. Compare that to Dallas. Who's the starting center in Dallas this season?
yeah, yeah. I mean, no, I completely hear you.
he's crying.
And
He's
while
melting before my eyes.
no, my thing is that here's my thing. My thing is that Dallas is dependent on big growth from multiple players, right? Which I don't think is that crazy for it to happen. Atlanta is not dependent on that. But I will say that I do think that the the ceiling for this Dallas Wings team is a little bit higher. I don't think they're going to reach that potential this season, but I think if we went into the future 5 years down the road and we look at this and we go looking back and we look at these rosters, I think it's very easy for us to say, "Wow, how did Atlanta beat Dallas out for that last playoff spot?" Which is a cop out. Yes, I'm well aware of that. But yeah, I just think there's so much talent on this Dallas team. They're so fun to watch. I would not be surprised for them to edge that out, even though I do think, for the reasons that you listed, Atlanta is the better team as of now. Any final thoughts on the power rankings? I feel like we've knocked it out the park, in my opinion, at least. I did my goal. I irked you, not irked you. I carried in the stick to you into a debate about something, and we disagreed. So I feel like it was worth the time. Any final thoughts on the power ranking?
Well, yeah, I think we can at least maybe rapid fire the teams we didn't get to at all. But on Dallas first, the with some of these teams too, the thing is looking at what they have, it's just what are what are some of the likely 5-player combinations you're going to put on the court, and how good are they going to be, right? That's what makes it so easy to like some of those contenders. And even Connecticut or Seattle, I think they might have some flaws, but they have that proven star talent, right? For Dallas,
Hmm.
I brought up who's their starting center because I think, yeah, I think they can be really dangerous on offense, and they're gonna have the element of the young legs with their roster, and Enrique Gumboale and Satu Sabali can just go for 60 on pretty much anybody. But who's the center, right? How are they gonna get? It's almost the same question for Seattle, but Seattle has better options right now, but how are you going to be able to get some stops, right? They want to get out and run, or they want to force turnovers. Well, the center, that's the most important piece of it. So how are they going to be able to do that, and to actually for that to really make a difference in how they're able to stay in some games?
Yeah. And then another team that I think we should do a little rapid fire on is LA. I mean, we talked about it. I think both of us view them as fighting for the eighth spot, possibly, likely, maybe even not making the playoffs, which it, for WNBA fans, for the LA Sparks not to make the playoffs, you have to go back to 2011. The LA Sparks, who have been in the league the whole time in the league. So we're entering the 25th season. This would be just the fifth time the team did not make the playoffs at all if this happened, which I think is noteworthy just because of the history of this team. But you look at this roster, they're going to have to prove a lot of people wrong to make the playoffs.
Well, and I don't know if that has to be this like like their version of a disrespect campaign. Like just look at their team. I mean, they kind of just they didn't run it back and then they just kind of grabbed what was available, right? I mean, yeah, I think Erica Wheeler is going to have a good season and Wheeler and Tolliver being able to run pick and rolls. Wheeler actually kind of went into some basketball stuff in her press conference, which was really cool. But just how's it going to fit all together? The piece of what you have at center is Amanda Zowie B, the defensive anchor of a playoff team. We haven't seen anything to suggest that. And if it's the Agumake sisters playing together a lot, that might even get a little bit clunky on offense in the paint. And, is Derek Fisher going to, take a step forward with them offensively and just really be able to put this all together and set these players up to succeed? I don't know. I don't totally love the mix. I don't totally love some of the decisions with the signings, and I just think the way it all pieces together. I think it's just almost a team that's kind of like Dallas. They have their players that are going to be tough to stop, but how does it all really fit together? I don't see tremendous upside there.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna kind of have to. Well, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I feel like LA is gonna be that type of team where you're like, all right, we're gonna opposing teams are just gonna say we're focusing in on these one or two players. Everybody else, cool, work us.
And, well, and
And,
just and
and
and how about Tolliver, right? What are we going to see? Is Tolliver just
yeah,
going to be what she was in the regular season in 19? Well, then that would make a pretty significant difference to go on proving that wrong. But we didn't see Christie play for a year. So what's that going to look like this year? I have no idea.
yeah. Hey, I'm with you. Real quick, I want to get to fan questions. Indiana, I feel like we don't need to really talk about. Um, but we're going to touch on all these teams, and I think fan questions are a fun one. We'll just do quick responses to that. First fan question, I apologize, didn't want to copy and butcher everyone's Twitter names and all that jazz, but what is Indiana's missing plan, master plan? I can't read. What's Indiana's master plan? Are we missing the forest for the trees? Love that saying, missing the forest for the trees. I will reuse it and butcher it. Indiana's master plan, I don't know if it's not to tank and or tank's the wrong word. If their plan isn't to accept a not great season so that they can grow some young players, which is something you called for last year, I called for last year. Heck, we've been calling for more than just last year. Then I don't know what their plan is. Any thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, well, no, I don't know what the plan is. I don't think you're missing something here specific to the things that they actually did so far. If you want Jantel Lavender to be your vet, fine. Don't give her a 3-year protected contract. That's basically a max contract. Why? That doesn't make any sense. She hasn't played in 2 years, and I know she said her foot's fine. She hasn't resumed basketball activities. It's not like she's playing overseas right now. You don't even know what you're getting. I mean, and even Danielle Robinson coming off a solid season, who can be a serviceable player, but it's just why do you need to make these 3-year commitments? I just think the long term vision has just really been missing from what they're doing here. Next off season, the year after that, go spend your money on a restricted free agent on another good team that they might not be able to pay for. Maisha Hines Allen, she's a restricted free agent next offseason. There's going to be names and there's going to be less money to spend. So why are you committing to these longer term commitments right now? Where else were those players going to go? Just sign them for a 1 or 2 year deal. And if you're really going to spend big money this offseason, then get an extension done with Kelsey Mitchell and at least get that out of the way and have peace of mind there. But it's just, you can say at the end of the day we'll still have X in cap space, but it just some of these longer term deals that are just being given out left and right with some of these teams, it's just you can. I think these teams are in a way kind of just underrating. You can spend that money next year and try to get a younger player that can fit more with this young core. It just yeah, that's my piece there.
There you go. Most underrated signing so far. I'm going Cheyenne Parker. I think she's going to have a huge impact. And the reason I say most underrated, yes, she got a lot of notoriety when it happened, but because she didn't win most improved player last year, because she wasn't on a championship team, heck, because she has never won a championship, I think a lot of the other moves got a lot of attention. And for the reasons we spoke about during the power ranking segment, I really think I agree with you completely that she is going to have a huge impact for this team. Her ability to stretch the floor and to play with those teammates in Atlanta is going to be a deadly combination. Who's your most underrated signing?
I wrote down a list here. I'll get to. I think I ended up with two that I lumped together. I did like that Indiana did get Temi Fagbenle in the Odyssey Sims trade.
Me
I
too.
liked
Good
that
call.
Atlanta got Vonnie Turner for a third round pick, someone that can play off the bench. The Raquana Williams signing in Vegas, that'll get plenty of love. I don't think that'll be under the radar enough to really qualify here. I do like Kamaya Smalls for Connecticut to give them someone that can shoot off the bench. I got to watch more Sydney Wallace, by the way, too. We'll see if she ends up making the roster too. Brittany Sykes ended up being a bargain at that price, I would think, for LA. But the big ones for me were Kiovan, a 2-year contract back with Phoenix, Tiana Hawkins, also a 2-year contract with Atlanta. Because, and this almost ties in with the Indiana point, those two contracts, they weren't protected. And those teams are getting good players. Kiovan had a really good season for Phoenix in her role last season. They
Really good.
can try to play her with Brittany Griner, which I think that I remember they had mentioned last year, and just have real stability at backup center. And Atlanta to get one of the few stretch bigs on this market on an unprotected contract in Tiana Hawkins, it's not going to be some obstacle in whatever they end up doing next off season. Compare those two players and that aspect of this to Natalie Chanwa, Amanda Zowie B, Jantel Lavender, Brianna Jones, even the contracts Dallas gave out last year, Astu Du, Mariah Jefferson, Isabel Harrison. Compare that to all those players getting multi-year protected contracts. For those teams, you better be all in on those players because that's just your that player is going to be on your roster for the length of that contract as opposed to trying to do something else and just maintaining more flexibility. Even Candice Dupree getting the big 1-year deal in Seattle. So I think you compare the value of those two signings to all those that I just listed off. I think that's outstanding.
I'm with you. Who do you think we hear from first, Cloud or Misaman? Now, I'm going to not answer the question. I'm going to say if I'm the Mystics, my main focus is Cloud first. They last year it was apparent that the issues that they had of not having Cloud, and also if Cloud signs or when she signs, she's likely going to be there all season as opposed to Emma Mieseman who has national team duties. Agree, disagree, any other thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, of course. Washington needs to get it done with Natasha Cloud and the financial planning aspect for them of they're gonna have to carve out. I'm not sure what the what the exact calculation is because I don't know what exactly the kind of the target date is for Emma Mieseman. If you're also factoring in the Olympics, right? So I mean she can't know, right? Are the we think those things are going to happen, right? But we'll see. So I think the the different scenarios Washington has to plan here are really complex because they already have taken care of pretty much everything else. They signed Clark and they signed Tina Charles back at a big number. So they're working with a very specific pool of money here, and these are the two things that they absolutely have to get done. So I would think that has to be a factor here. But yeah, if they don't have Cloud, you're right. The the aspect of you having her all season. and obviously driving the ship for them on both ends of the court. And Misaman, the Misaman part might be tough too because it's just what do you really expect from Emma, right? You can't expect her to know what this season's going to look like, and do you try to give her a deadline? Is there even any risk where Emma would look somewhere else? She is an unrestricted free agent as opposed to Cloud, who can only negotiate with the Mystics. But we haven't seen anything so far, and we haven't seen any reason to think Emma would want to go somewhere else. But but just whether or not we see her again, it comes back to Washington's already done X, Y, and Z, and they only have a certain amount of money left to still make it happen with those two players.
Appreciate the insight. If you were a GM, who amongst the remaining free agents would you try and sign? In parentheses, easy answer is Sims, but a non-Sims answer would be appreciated. Um, Honestly, like Sims is I agree. Sims is definitely up there.
You
Rhea
got. Do you have
Holmes,
some teams for Sims, by the way, that you like?
well, do you want me to talk from a salary cap standpoint or from a fit standpoint?
Well, yeah, it has to be possible, and there aren't very many.
Well, exactly. I mean, what we're talking about, Minnesota technically could. Um, I mean, here's the thing: none of the ones that can actually afford her, make me think that it would be a good fit. Does that make sense?
That's what I was gonna ask. Is do you see a team that you like, a plausible suitor that you actually like more than Minnesota? I'm not sure that I have one.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, it's a shitty situation for her. But hey, it's only so shitty because she's getting paid. So,
No, it's if that's what
um,
happens. No, it's not. At the end of the day, there's no problem if that's what ends up happening.
yeah. No, I mean, I'm just saying in the sense of like players want to play. But yes, you're right. Getting paid 119 to not do anything, not too bad. Not too bad at all. Spend some time with your kid, hang out at home, hone your craft, get better, do something next year. Um,
Well, wait, but
Besides
why are you
Sims,
talking about it like she's been ruled out for the season?
I'm not saying she's ruled out for the season. Yeah, there's an injury. Maybe someone brings her in or someone cuts somebody. I mean, I from where I'm standing now, I'm thinking, okay, the likelihood of her signing anywhere before the season isn't that high.
Oh, I disagree. Why wouldn't
Okay.
Minnesota just try to do it?
No, if I'm Minnesota, I'm definitely trying to do it. There, it's much more of a question of is she interested to come back after that? I know she was really happy in Minnesota. Things maybe change after that whole trade thing goes down. I don't know.
Right. That's an interesting question. Is did that does that do those do those machinations, did those possibly upset Odyssey? That she got traded. So you could understand if you want to say, well, why do I want to go back there if you just moved me? But the the reason of why Minnesota did it is easy to explain, but that's really up to her there because but as what the question we're going to get to here was that when I was just looking at every team and okay, what actually seems what spots actually seem like they're up for grabs. The spot behind Crystal Dangerfield in Minnesota was one of the main ones that stood out. Is that just Rachel Banham that ends up doing it? Do they do they work it out? Does Sims go back, or is that maybe something they wait to address in the draft?
Yeah. I mean, it will be interesting, especially because, I mean, they don't have much cap space. They, what, I'm blanking right now, but because I don't have the cap numbers right in front of me, they do have the cap space, correct? But it would just be extremely tight.
The links to re-sign Sims.
Yes, at the vet minimum.
Oh, of course, yeah, they can do that, no problem.
All right, cool. Appreciate the clarification. Other than that, I mean, I'd be looking at we're gonna talk about top free agents besides Sims in a moment, so we'll get to it there. But and this is a question I think we already talked on, so I don't think we need to respond to. But I want to give it a shout out because hey, people did ask us. But what's our opinion on the LA team in its current state?
Well,
Will they
we
make
didn't
more
answer the
moves?
we didn't actually do the last question, right?
What? Oh, who are the top remaining free
Yeah.
agents? Well, we're gonna get to that because we're gonna go over top free agents
Oh, we're
left
doing that after
later
this
on.
one. Okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I figured, we'll just talk Sims and then move on. But uh, LA in its current state, will they make more moves? Personally, I expect LA to make, the same signings and focus on getting Vidiva over, get the Agumekes on the roster and bring over Vidiva if you can. To me, that's like kind of it, right? They don't want to do too good that, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think they're going to do too good, and I think it could damage them in regards to, hey, being a lottery team versus not a lottery team could damage, things like that. It could damage your draft pick. So, what are your thoughts on the status of LA?
Well, we're gonna get to it with the list of free agents, but no, I don't think there's someone just sitting out there that they need to be in a rush to go and get. So I would circle just the aspect of if there is an Odyssey Sims like trade possibility that comes along where someone is trying to move a protected contract, which is the very circumstance that teams shouldn't want to be in, which is why I've highlighted in some of these cases why are you signing those contracts? And Dallas is the team that comes to mind if they're trying to. If you're LA, can you take a contract on if Dallas really wants to do that badly and ask for the number 5 or the number 7 pick? That might seem unlikely, but if Dallas really wants to do it and time keeps ticking off the clock, maybe you can kind of wait them out there. So that would be the main thing I would circle. And just yeah, the Agumike sisters. NECA has not signed a new contract, and we haven't seen any kind of update on what Chiney's plans are. And yeah, you mentioned Vadiva. We'll see what happens there, but she is under contract, so I think it's can the trade happen? Finalizing deals for NECA and Chiney, and then I think LA should leave a roster spot open, hopefully even two, frankly, or at least have the flexibility to easily open up a second and just sit there until even after the draft and just be the vulture circling the waiver wire because we're really down to, I think, for a lot of teams, seeing what happens in the second round of the draft and see who gets cut, scoop them up on waivers, or just maybe a second round pick becomes available and there's someone you really like and you maybe try to pounce on that on draft night. And that's how they got Taya Cooper, right? So just last year.
True.
So see if you can also get value in that kind of opportunity.
I actually really like that, and I like the vulture reference. Let's talk about what teams still have left to do. We talked about LA. I think we've touched on DC. I mean, there's only so many teams that really have stuff left to do. So I'm going to pass it over to you. What teams come to mind? What teams are you thinking of that there's still something on the checklist for them to do in this free agency period? Not in the draft, specifically free agency.
Yeah, just in free agency, Washington is the big one. We just covered LA. Looking around at the other teams, just the international piece, of course, just trying to find out what those players want to do. Are some of them already going to say and know ahead of time, hey, I won't come over, so you can go from there. But other than that, Cecilia Zandolsini, one of those players, what's going to happen there? Shatori Walker Kimbrough is sitting out there as a free agent, an unrestricted free agent, after getting traded to Phoenix, and then they pulled their qualifying offer for her. They ended up trading for Kia Nurse and Megan Walker, and the options seem pretty slim at this point, even just in terms of gettable roster spots out there. So what happens with Walker Kimbrough? So some of these are more player specific. Rebecca Allen for New York, that would be somebody that would feature pretty prominently in their rotation. I would think Liz Cambage for the Aces, although I don't think they're going to feel any kind of pressure. They've got that plenty of cap space set aside to give Liz a max contract, so that's not a huge issue there. So I just said it. I think we're really at the stage of what happens with these first round picks. So looking at you, Dallas, mainly, right, or some of these teams. I think they might just be kind of looking at Dallas trying to pounce if one or a couple of those picks become available, and then you can probably move from there. And then maybe we see some teams that want to get into the second round and see how that plays out and try to jockey for the sleepers that they might see in this draft.
I'm calling it now. Everyone's been talking about how like this draft isn't that deep and next year's so deep. A bunch of players are not. This is me, just Johnny Carson, letter to the forehead. A bunch of players are going to take advantage of the set of an extended year of eligibility in college, and next year's draft is going to be that much deeper. Just calling it now. Hate me, love me, whatever. Let's talk about the top free agents left. And I kind of broke it into two subcategories for me: the flat out top free agents left in no specific order, and then free agents that, just based off of what they've been able to accomplish in their career, still deserve to be mentioned in this conversation. So I'll let you kind of decipher which is which group. But I have Odyssey Sims, Glory Johnson, Shatori Walker Kimbrough, Bria Holmes, Sydney Colson, Shanice Johnson, Essence Carson, the GOAT, Simone Augustus, and Karima Christmas Kelly. Are there any players that I missed there?
For the very top free agents, not necessarily for me, because again, there don't seem to be very many gettable spots left. I did Reza Musina is one player for me, the young forward, plays with Maria Vadiva on the Russian national team. Could be an interesting forward. I think it's easy to see her as a stretch forward, but she does have a little bit of that ability to put the ball on the floor. She also is very thin, and again, I don't know what her commitment level. Commitment might be unfair word to use, but just does she want to come over, especially when she's had a couple rounds here and just, hey, are you actually gonna give me a real chance to be on your roster? That kind of thing. Haley
Well, yeah, and
Gurecki,
how many teams really have spots? That's the other thing
yeah,
that I feel like is the elephant in the room. There's just not that many spots left. I mean, we talk about it all the time how hard it is to make a WNBA roster. We're getting to the point where household names or people that have been in the league for a while now might be forced into retirement or forced into taking a season off. And is that the worst thing in the world? No, not necessarily, but it is a harsh reality of where we are.
yeah. I mean, I can go quickly team by team if you want, and how just whether I think a roster spot's even open.
Boom, do it.
So Atlanta, maybe one spot, but I'm not sure that they'll in this case that they'll even be carrying 12 players. So Atlanta carrying 11, I think they might be done if they just if they just select their first round pick, and if Vonnie Turner's seen as a pretty strong candidate to make their roster. Chicago, in theory, they could waive somebody and sign a player at the veterans minimum. So that could be somebody to circle, but between their first round pick, their second round pick, and just are the players they already have under contract, plus Brittany Boyd on a training camp deal, I don't even really think I would say that they really have an open roster spot. Connecticut, they're totally strapped. They can't even pry open the room to offer somebody a contract at the veterans minimum. So that's someone with 3 or more years of service. So a lot of these names, right? Essence Carson, Shanice Johnson, if you want to throw them out there, that they have to sign for at least that much. So
Yeah.
Connecticut and Phoenix, the other team, they can't do that. They don't have that kind of room. Dallas, that you would think, oh, are they flexible? They have all these picks. Not really. They're already spoken for, basically in terms of their roster. Indiana, they could move some stuff around. We also don't know what Jessica Breland's contract came in at, so it's tough to get the whole picture there. So one or two spots, it would probably be fair to say those are still in play. Las Vegas, I think that'll come down to just more to their draft picks. I don't know if I see an opening there. The Sparks, if they waived Tierra Ruffin Pratt, maybe they could sign somebody else instead. Maybe one spot there. Minnesota, I think they're spoken for with what they have on the roster. New York, same thing. Although with their international players, I just don't know how that's going to break for them. Covered Phoenix already. Seattle already has 14 players, if you include the training camp contracts, plus all of their picks this year. So I don't see that opportunity there. And Washington, I don't really see them. I doubt. I mean, they kind of made their one play. If they're going to keep someone that's not uh, a rookie making that total minimum salary, they already got Erica McCall. I mean, are they even going to have to move on to Erica McCall just because that can open up 10,000 whatever more dollars because it's going to be that slim for them? So to sum it up, what did I actually say here? Maybe a spot or two in Indiana, maybe one in LA, Chicago if they really wanted to. Other than that, there just isn't really there doesn't seem to be anything in play. Again, I think a lot of those other spots are just more for second round picks and rookies that get cut.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I will say you did mention before that you thought maybe Sims goes back to Minnesota, which would be at a vet minimum. So Minnesota, maybe.
Yeah, that was for a pretty specific player there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 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 I hear you. I just didn't want, the trolls to come after us. Any final thoughts on any of these topics before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, I was trying to finish my the couple players I had mentioned. I was gonna say Haley Garecki. Maybe that could be somebody that gets a look as just maybe a two guard with some size that can shoot. I do like a lot of what she did offensively. Her final season at Duke. Do teams think she'll be able to defend? Will she be able to dribble? Uh, Handle the ball a lot against WNBA athleticism? Maybe that's the open question there. I also wonder if how about this one? How about Taylor Hill? Is Taylor Hill trying to make a comeback? That's that's
Left
that's a
field,
name I've wondered
right?
about.
No, it's a great call. I did recently see on Instagram she was posting some workout videos of her in the gym getting some shots up. So not crazy.
Yeah, so we'll see. But again, as we just covered, I think a lot of these teams have the bigger picture taken care of.
Yeah. Hey, I agree with you. And I appreciate your insight. Don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast, The Winsidr Show, and another podcast, The Floor Game. Ben Dole is the host, and it's presented by Winsidr. You can find all these shows on your favorite podcast apps, but make sure you download them when you listen. It helps our stats and in turn gives us the ability to continue doing what we do.